Okay, then I would like to call this meeting of the San Mateo Park and Recreation Commission to order. Could I have everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Giovanna, could you call the roll, please?
I would be happy to, Chair Massey. Commissioner Wolnick?
Here.
Commissioner Holm?
Here.
Commissioner Fields?
Here.
Vice Chair Held?
Here.
Chair Massey?
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
That's excellent. Okay. So as we've been doing every time now for the last, and I think it's going to be 2 years in March. I'm going to describe for the members of the public who may be interested how to participate in the meeting at appropriate moments. Due to the physical distancing protocols in place at this time, we continue to encourage public participation remotely. Information on how to provide public comment is explained at the top and bottom of the published agenda. There are 2 ways to participate. Join the Zoom meeting by clicking on the link at the top of the agenda. Use the raise your hand button to be called on at the appropriate time. Please unmute yourself only when called upon. Alternatively, phone-in participation can be done by calling area code 408-638-0968 with the conference ID 832-8971-2361, passcode 232343. Press 9 to raise your hand to be called on. I'm sorry, press star 9 to raise your hand to be called on and star 6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until public comment is closed off. Okay. At this point, we will move to our consent calendar, and which consists tonight of approval of the regular meeting minutes for the meeting held December 1st, 2021. I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Giovanna, could you do a roll call vote, please?
I would be happy to, Chair Massey. Commissioner Held?
Aye.
Commissioner Fields?
Aye.
Commissioner Holm?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolnick?
Aye.
Chair Massey?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion has passed.
Okay, that's great. All right. At this time, well, before I get into that, do we have any members of the public on at present?
There is nobody in the attendees list this time.
Okay, well, I'm just wondering if I need to read through the whole blurb about members of the public commenting on items not on the agenda. But you're saying we don't have any members of the public plugged in?
No, there is nobody in attendance.
Okay, all right. Sheila, I believe I'm correct in thinking then we can dispense with that.
I think as a formality, it probably just might be helpful just to read it.
Read it into the
In
record?
case then,
Sure.
yeah, in case anybody happens to look at the meeting tape later, they at least want to make sure that you've done that.
Okay, all right, well, here we go. At each of our meetings, we offer to members of the public in attendance the opportunity to comment briefly to the commission on any item not appearing on tonight's agenda. The sole item on tonight's agenda is parks, open spaces, and facility naming policy. Anyone who wishes to comment on any other issue for the commission may do so at this time. State law prevents the commission from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. Public comment is limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, an opportunity for additional public comment may be provided later in the agenda. We still have no members of the public in attendance?
That is correct, Chair Massey.
Okay, thank you. Then I will close the public comment period and move to our next agenda item, parks, open spaces, and facility naming policy. Sheila, do you or one of yours have a presentation on this, or how are you going to put this to us?
So thank you, Chair Massey and members of the commission. A couple things. I'm happy to share my screen and put up a red line version of the policy if you care to go through the specific comments. I believe I picked up all of the commission comments from your December meeting. Subsequent to that, we did have the policy reviewed by the city attorney's office. There were really some, I think, relatively minor comments. I did note in the staff report that a new section 7 was added by the city attorney's office, but I'm happy to pull up that red line version if you care to go through each of the comments and make sure that you feel comfortable with that. So is there an interest in wanting me to pull up the policy, or do you all feel relatively comfortable that the comments that were made reflected the commission discussion from December?
Comfortable.
Same.
Yeah, all the documents are publicly available. I was able to review it before this meeting. Hopefully, so are our fellow commissioners.
Okay,
Okay, so I have three votes for basically accepting this as presented. Who am I missing? Other than
Oh, sorry, I did have two minor things if.
yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm doing a split screen, so bear with me while I try to do this. Both were in the miscellaneous section.
The section 7 at the end.
Yes. So the first one says no park, open space, or facility shall be named after a seated, elected, or appointed official. I'm assuming that meant nobody in office at the time. Was that the intention? Okay, so I think it might be clear if it said seated official, whether elected or appointed. I thought it was a little ambiguous how it was written. And then my other minor comment is in B, I think illicit should be illicits with a plural, with an S.
Yes.
okay.
But no substantive comments. I thought it all was exactly what we talked about. I think it's good.
It's all fine. Okay, well, I'm in agreement with the rest of you on that point. However, Sheila, as I understand it, you would like us to engage on the issues around the fundraising campaigns where the city attorney's office has presented us with 3 alternative approaches, that all of which, at least for what I got from her comments, any of which is acceptable to them. but we are asked to pick one, I think. Is that where we're at?
That's correct. Before we get to that, though, I did indicate in the staff report that there were sort of two questions that the commission wanted to pose to the city attorney's office. One was around the ability to have this policy apply to private open spaces. And I think I provided in the staff report the response from the city attorney. That indicated that private open spaces, privately held but publicly accessible open spaces are really subject to whatever conditions of approval go through the planning application process. And so I think the result of that was that if there was a high desire at some future development, that the council wanted to ask a developer to name a privately held, publicly accessible open space for some particular name, that they could suggest that, but that there is not a requirement that the developer have to follow that. So I did want to just call that to your attention, because I think that was one of the other questions. The second one I think that came up was, as Chair Massey indicated, what's the preference around that section around naming as part of a fundraising policy? And so I think that the response from the attorney's office was really three. One is that you could leave it in as it's currently written. Second, that you could remove it and have it be included in some future policy that might be very specific to fundraising in general for a facility. And the third is, and I referenced this in the staff report, the city currently has a policy that is a department-wide policy that indicates under what conditions can business endorsements be solicited. Primarily that applies to programs and special events. And so it was really intended to say, if we want to go out and get fundraisers for the summer concert series, under what conditions could we go and then raise money on that? I did reference that there was only one sentence in that policy that even mentions facilities. And so I included that. So one other option is that we could ask, in this case, the city manager's office to go back and redo that citywide policy and try to put in more clarity around facilities. But do understand that that's a citywide policy. It would not be specific just to Parks and Recreation. So there are really three options: leave it in, remove it, and have it considered as a future part of a fundraising policy, or three, expand on the current business endorsement policy that is a citywide one. So those are really the three options I think the commission has to consider.
Okay. Well, just for the formality, does anyone have questions about this as opposed to comments or expressing a point of view? Seeing none, we can move on to everybody's views on this matter. Sarah, why don't we start with you?
I mean, I read through the policy. I think that it really captures the perspective that I've already shared around the issues at hand. And, you know, I think there were a few double commas or some spaces, like there's some copy editing that needs to take place. But beyond that, I think this is a great policy document and I'd be happy to support it.
Okay, but I guess specifically with respect to the fundraising campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I like the language that's in there right now. I think that it puts the right message forward, and I think that there should be something that's stated, even if it's just a restatement of this broad citywide policy, that there should be some mention of fundraising here simply for the fact that the last time I think there was a big capital campaign was a long time ago. And we need to, we do have some needs for facilities improvements, and we shouldn't exclude any possible options. So if fundraising is something that we need to use, then great, but there probably should be a mention of, even if it's just an existing policy, we should just reference that existing policy.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Lindsay?
I think I would agree that we just leave it in the existing policy as it's written. I'd be curious to hear more about potentially including this in a future fundraising policy. Sheila, is there anything in the works on that, or is there any other context? No, okay.
I mean, that was just an option that I think our city attorney's office had, that any future policy will exist outside of my lifetime in this department. And so I can't speak to if such a policy would be developed and when it might.
Okay. In that case, I think I would keep it in our existing proposal. That's all.
Okay, all right. Heather?
I agree. I think it should be here. I think if there needs to be a policy in the future, you can always take it out of here and do that, but I'd rather have something than not and sort of wait until this future policy. I also think Sarah's right about the facilities master plan. We have a lot of stuff coming up, so it seems to me that it makes sense to have it all together, parks, facilities, rather than trying to reference this other more citywide policy, because I think there is going to be some big ticket facilities that we can see. I mean, it's not coming down the corner, but it's coming. So I'm also in favor of leaving it where it is as written.
Okay, thank you. Eric?
I think it's fine the way it's written.
Okay, well, I'm happy to go along with everybody else on this. If I had been hearing that there was an overall citywide fundraising campaign policy in the works, I might have felt differently, but hearing about none, I'm with you on this. I liked the wording that we have, and so I'm very comfortable with leaving this the way it is.
So thank you. We are looking for a motion to adopt the current policy. And again, and if there's any, spelling or punctuation, we will take care of that. This will go forward to the city council, probably at a meeting in late March. So we are looking for a recommendation to adopt the policy. It sounds like it is as written.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to recommend it as written.
I'll second.
Okay, Giovanna, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Happy to, Chair Massey. Commissioner Warnick,
Aye.
Commissioner Holm,
Aye.
Commissioner Fields,
Aye.
Commissioner Held,
Aye.
Commissioner Massey.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion has passed.
All right, well, that was certainly efficient. So now we pass to reports and announcements, and Commissioner Wolnick, I see that you are agendized on here, so why don't you start?
Sure. So we have two new commissioners since this, we had kind of last talked about this. So I guess I'm looking for direction from you guys on where to start. I mean, are you familiar with the general plan process? Do I just start where we are right now? Okay, great. So we're in the land use and circulation component of the general plan, and there are three alternatives. I sent you guys an email. There were 2 public workshops in the last week or so. And so there's 3 land use options and 3 circulation options. And we're trying to, consolidate to a preferred option. This will be kind of the zoning map, if you will. So there'll be two general plan subcommittee meetings, and I'm this commission's representative on that. And one is in March and one is in February and one is the first week of March. And those are public meetings. So if you have thoughts or anything, you can come and share them. And then it'll go before the Planning Commission at the end of March, and then likely City Council in April for adoption of the preferred map. And then it goes through an EIR process. So it won't be set for a long time. In the meantime, while that map is going through the EIR, we'll be looking as a city at the goals, policies, actions that go with it. So these topics can include, climate change, environmental justice, equity, urban design, historic resources, and more parks, community health and safety, noise, land use, all that. So anything like an example would be, the city's climate action plan. We could put a goal in there for a reduction of car trips or a reduction in emissions or something like that. So that's all what we'll be talking about over the next year. So that's where we are. I can open it up to questions, or if there's any particular topic you guys want me to bring back to this commission to talk about, I'm happy to do that. But you're always welcome to come to any of the public meetings as well.
Okay, any comments from anybody other than me?
Yeah, I have a question to Commissioner Walnick. Would you say these workshops have been well attended? Do you feel like the word's been getting out? I know it's been challenging to have these things over Zoom. Is there more we can be doing to support this process? Is my question to you.
Yeah, I think it's kind of been a mixed bag. I think they've had some good turnout. We've had some good turnout recently. It does seem like every single public meeting, it's a large percentage of people's first public meeting about the general plan. So it does seem like people keep getting more engaged, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time, right? Because we've been doing this for, I think, at least 2-3 years now. This process has been going on. So people coming to it now are kind of, you have to catch everybody up, and that takes time, but definitely a blessing in that I think people are paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the best thing is if I get notices of meetings, I'll send them out to you guys. And I think the best thing is just to tell people, and any method you would tell people anyway about meetings that they might be interested in, just get the word out.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? Okay, I had just a couple of things about this. One of them is that I wonder if you could just say a few words about the survey. I've seen the survey. I haven't had a chance to try to fill it out yet, but I wonder if you could just say a few words about that and sort of how that fits into the program of public meetings and so forth.
Yeah, so I haven't looked at the survey. I'm not 100% sure of all the questions on it, but there is a huge book. I think I sent you the link, which is the analysis of all of the 3 proposed maps for each study area. And there's, I think, I'm going to say it wrong, but I think there's 10, might be more than that. And each area has 3 options, right? So the survey, I think, is for people that weren't able to go to these public meetings to really flesh out like which parts of this, do we like option A in study area 2 and option B in study area 5, and to try to really kind of coalesce it into a preferred a map. Because in general, the three options are housing, more housing, the most housing is kind of the difference. I mean, there's some differences also in like, is this retail space? Is this mixed use? Is this, research and development area, that kind of thing. But that really, it seems that the major differences are, light housing, medium housing, and a lot of housing.
And how would you characterize the three? There was similarly 3 levels of the circulation plan. Is there an equally sort of succinct way of summarizing that?
Yeah, the way that staff has been kind of summarizing it is that the first option, A, is more focused on pedestrian connectivity around the city. Option B is really focused on transit and getting east-west connections. And then option C is all of the above. So that's generally speaking how it is.
So, okay. All right. So in the survey, we're meant to be considering basically the intersection of 6 possibilities, 3 of housing and 3 of circulation. As it affects each of 10 study areas or the city as a whole?
You know, I don't know how the survey is worded. I mean, I think we're definitely coming to a map as a whole, but I think what you're doing is looking at different areas and sort of saying what you like and don't like about the different options. And there's a bunch of metrics that they've studied, you know, like, does this option adds more housing, which will meet our goals, or this option will, you know, increase the vehicle miles traveled for this area. The pollution, or this area is, you know, historically more economically depressed, and it will have more effects from being by the freeway, or, you know, it kind of has all of that laid out. And it is a beast. I've gotten through, I'd say 75% of it so far. It's tough, but they do lead you through the questions, sort of having you prioritize all the metrics, like, you know, are you prioritizing equity? Are you prioritizing affordable housing? Are you prioritizing, you know, green space, which we should all say yes, but on this commission anyway. So that's sort of, I'm assuming the survey is the second half of what I've been reading, which that's what it is, a workbook, like that's how it has you work through it. But I'm not gonna lie, it is a lot. It is a lot to get through.
The
Yeah.
survey is a lot to get through, or the book is a lot?
The book, yeah.
Okay. And I'm trying to remember when I saw this, but you've sent this to us?
I sent a link because it's on the Strive San Mateo.
Yeah.
I can probably, if I can get on my right screen, I can drop the link in the chat here.
I think that's where the survey is.
Commissioner
We don't-
Warnick?
We don't have a chat function.
Oh, okay, no worries.
On these webinars, sorry.
So that's okay. If you go, it's just Strive, STRIVE, sanmateo.org. There on the top, on the drop-down menus, you want to go to documents.
Yeah.
And then I think it's the first one in the list, alternatives evaluation report. And there's a link under there that says alternatives evaluation workbook.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And there's also a link to the survey that Chris is referencing right in that same spot.
Yeah, okay. My other question is, and without it necessarily going on all night, can you give us some sense of at least what you've seen of this, what's in it for Park and Rec, and what sort of aspects of this are things that looking at what's going on through from a Park and Rec viewpoint, what's going on that we should be paying attention to, or that could have an impact on us?
It's more tangential. So remember that this is a zoning map, right? So we're just kind of making the spaces for other people to develop it. I guess the exception is the circulation plan, which would be city projects. But we're just kind of making space. So the alternatives have varying degrees of public, what is it, private public space? Is that the right term? It's what we've been talking about, right? Can we name those places? So when a
Yeah.
development goes up, right, they have to build a park or have recreation space or give the city money.
Yeah, they have to have, if they, as part of the development agreement, they have to have, sometimes anyway, they have to take some of the property and devote it to a park or a recreation facility, something that's going to be open to the public.
Right. So there is a lot of that in the maps, in all of the alternatives. I was definitely paying attention to that when we went through this before.
Mhm.
One of the things that I do intend to bring up at the subcommittee meetings is just to make sure that that the land isn't, that the zoning doesn't preclude the possibility of a park, right? So if for whatever reason, the city was able to come up with the money to buy a parcel of land, I just want to make sure that then the city wouldn't be precluded to build a park there. I kind of want that to always be an option. And I think that's relevant to this commission.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that.
But I'm not 100% sure that is even something we have to bring up, because I think that might just be, you can kind of always build a park because it's the least. I mean, anyway, I won't go into it here, but I'm going to raise it, get my question asked, and see what they say on that.
Okay. I don't have anything else. Anybody?
I thought of another question. Sorry.
Please.
Okay, so I know that we have an obligation right now to, or a guideline to have a certain ratio of park space to residents in San Mateo. Sheila, can you tell us what it is? I don't remember what off the top of my head what it is, but I bet you do.
So if I remember correctly, I believe the general plan standard right now is 2 acres per 1,000.
That sounds right to me.
Commissioner Wolnick, has there been any discussion of changing that? Can that be changed in the general plan? I'm curious, and I'll say, for if anyone's curious, I would be comfortable with shifting towards proximity to park space over this ratio, but it's something that I'm aware of, that we have this guideline, and I'm curious about if we're adding. I think our RENA numbers are like close to 7,000 housing units of housing. If we add that much housing and if we add population, do we continue to meet that ratio? And does private park development count in that ratio? That might be a question for Sheila also.
Yeah, so we're not talking about that currently in the map, but I think that is definitely up for discussion in the next phase, because then it'll look at, okay, what as a city do we value? What are our goals? And to achieve that, do we have to make ordinance changes? Do we have to, policy changes, whatever it is? So yeah, that definitely can be in the discussion in the next phase of this.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Commissioner Wolnick. I think that it can be proximity. It can be upping the acreage from 2 acres per 1,000 to 3 acres per 1,000. So I think any of those are possibilities as the general plan goes through the process. And I think to the extent that new development either has to require, provide park space, open space in their own development. And I think this gets into a little bit of what actually Heather had asked me to speak to, and that is, where are we on the new park in lieu fees that I think you all talked about last year. And I think there was general agreement that the commission was in agreement with the council, and that we wanted to expand those to include commercial properties on that. The one piece of that, and I think it's a little bit of a roundabout answer to try to get to the last question, which is the credit system. And I know that there were a number of commissioners who had some questions about our current credits. And should there be a differentiation between facilities that are only available to residents of a development versus facilities that might be available to the entire public? And in those cases, should a developer get higher credit towards that if it was open to the public versus those that are only open and available to the people who live there? So I know that there were a number of credit questions that are really tied then to the development of the park in lieu policy. The company, that consultant that had worked on the entire impact fee report matrix indicated to us that they did not have the bandwidth to take this on at this time. And so we now have just signed a contract with EPS, which is another highly regarded system, and they are going to do that analysis for us. And so they're going to look at credit systems for cities in the Bay Area. They're going to come forward with some best practices in terms of what they think. And so I do think that there will be some options for the commission to consider in terms of that. So it kind of goes part and parcel then with adopting a new in lieu fee ordinance that also then will have a different credit system along with it. So that's kind of where we are with that process. But also I do think that it does relate to development again, as development comes online, and what kind of facilities does a development want to get credit for? And which is great. If it's open space, you know, a small green patch of land in a development is not going to provide great recreational opportunities. And a swimming pool that might be available only to residents is great, but it's not going to relieve, you know, the burden on public swimming pools. So I think those will be some of the things that this consultant will be taking a look at, and ultimately will then get worked into to how green space and open space and recreational facilities are provided in developments going forward.
Did we answer the question? Okay. Anyone else?
No, it looks as though no, and thank you very much for your efforts and representing us in this process. I think this has probably gone on a lot longer than you anticipated when you signed up for this. But I think it's very important, and it's frankly a hard thing to follow if you are just looking at the material, copious though it is, that's provided to the general public. So we are very appreciative of your involvement in this and your efforts.
Yeah, one last note, there was a project manager shift last year. The woman who had been handling it for a while, or since the beginning, there's a new project manager who I just spoke with last week. And so I think there had been, not that this has anything to do with the shift in the project manager, but there had been some complaints in the past about the public outreach efforts and the way that some of the material was presented. And so hopefully we'll, you know, going forward, we'll hear fewer and fewer of those kind of complaints.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll wait and see on that.
I'm sorry, just one last comment. And that is that if commissioners are interested in attending a public workshop, whether virtually or ultimately if they return in person, you do need to let Giovanna know, because if there are more than 2 commissioners who attend a virtual or a public workshop, then they have to notify it as a as a public meeting. So if you are interested, great. But do let Giovanna know so that if we find that there are 3 of you that want to attend, we just have to let them know that to advertise it as a public meeting.
Yeah, and the subcommittee meetings are already public meetings, so I don't know that do you have to then advertise it again? Okay.
No,
So if you want to come to the
it's really only the public meetings,
Okay.
like the last 2 that were held. If there were 3 of you that wanted to attend one of those, then it has to be noticed as a public meeting.
Okay.
Aren't they already public meetings?
They are public meetings, but there has to be a notice that there will be commission members from the Park and Recreation Commission in attendance.
These are Brown Act compliance issues, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Sheila, does that apply to our public meetings as well? I wasn't,
Mhm.
I guess I hadn't thought about that. Because you had the meeting, which I was going to ask you about at some point in this section of tonight's meeting. You had the public meeting in the park at East Hillsdale.
Mhm.
And I attended. I didn't see any other commissioners there, but I hadn't thought about there being Brown Act implications of having commissioners attend this.
Yeah, it's a subtle reminder that we should probably just continue to remind you all of. So whether it's a virtual meeting or again an in-person meeting, if there are more than 2 of you that want to attend, and we generally don't find that a problem. I think I can recall maybe back 4 or 5 years ago when we were doing some of the early meetings about the Central Park Master Plan in the very early stages, there may have been 3 commissioners who attended one of those workshops. But generally, we don't find it to be a problem. But if you are going to attend one of our own meetings, it's probably best to let us know in advance.
Okay, no, I'm glad to hear that. We're all here to have heard it. So no, that's great. That's great.
So I do have a number of reports and announcements.
Good.
So just first off, certainly this last COVID surge, I would say, has had moderate impact on our staff and our programs. And I say moderate compared to several other departments in the city that have had really severe staffing shortages as a result. So at any one time, we potentially have had 3 to 5 people out, staff, whether they be full-time or part-time. The other challenge that we have that is probably different than other departments is that we also have to notice any exposure notice if one of our participants lets us know that they have COVID. And so that's particularly, has been particularly problematic in our after-school daycare program and our preschool program. And so it has been challenging since the end of December and all through January. The good news is that we are starting to see the case numbers in our own staff come down. Where we can, we have moved programs outside rather than keeping them inside. I will say, however, that we have not experienced a wholesale reduction of people who asked to withdraw from programs. Not like we did 2 years ago, obviously, when the pandemic first started. I mean, obviously, everybody withdrew. We've not seen that this time. And so I think people are being a little bit more sensitive to just not automatically pulling either themselves or their children out of programs, which I think is good news. But it has had an impact. And as I said, we are starting to see fewer of those happening in our programs and with our staff. But it has had an impact in terms of either having us have to change programs in some cases, and particularly for some of the drop-in programs at King Center and at the Senior Center, we've not been able to provide those. But hopefully by the end of February and with our spring program that we will be able to get back to a more normal program schedule. So just wanted to bring you all up to date in terms of what's been going on with COVID and this latest surge. Commissioner Massey alluded to a community meeting that we had out at East Hillsdale Park. We did have it in person. It was on a Saturday out in the park. It was a great turnout from the East Hillsdale Park neighbors. We had had a virtual meeting with them back in October and presented some ideas, and the feedback was very honest and very forthright. And we heard that that they wanted things to be much simpler and toned down from what we had proposed. So we did that. I think we heard the community. We provided 3 new playground alternatives. We wanted to make sure that we addressed community concerns about some infrastructure issues like repaving the pathway and some drainage issues that we've been aware of. All of those will be incorporated. But I really do appreciate the feedback from the community. My overall sense was that they were very appreciative of the changes that we had made. And so I'm actually hoping to bring that back to this commission in March and show you the preferred alternative that the community would like to see. So great turnout, very heartfelt comments. Obviously, the people around that park are very, very appreciative and love their community park. So it was great to see so many people. Probably had 35 or 40 people turn out. So, and it was great to actually have it in person and not do Zoom.
Yeah, I thought it was I don't know how often you've done this in the past, but I thought it was a very effective format to talk about a particular, if you're talking about a particular park, to hold the meeting in the park. And that way, yes, we were looking at diagrams and so forth for the facilities under consideration. But as far as the setting, the sort of the park as it is, you just looked around. I just thought that was very powerful.
We have learned some lessons over the years, particularly around parks. And one is, do have a meeting in the park that's being affected. And 2, do ask children what they want to see in a playground, not just adults. So it was it was a great turnout, and we plan on bringing that, I think, back to this commission in March for you all to take a look at.
Great.
A couple of other things I mentioned in our matrix. Progress is going forward really well on Burrell Park. We lost some time during December with the rains, but they've been obviously working really steadily during January. The sidewalk along Shafter Street is poured. The retaining walls are starting to go in the lower part of the park. The playground equipment has been delivered and is stored on site. So the projected completion date, and obviously assuming that there's no further major rain delays, is probably going to be sometime in mid-June. And so I think it'll be a great community addition for the neighbors around Burrell Park. So that one is coming along really well. We will be also bringing back to the commission in March the latest design development drawings for Central Park on the playground and the restroom and picnic shelter building. So we'll be bringing those to the commission with a little bit more refinements to over what you saw. I think we got some great comments from the commission And so hopefully those have been included in the next iteration, and we'll be bringing those back to you again, we think in March as well. So we've got a lot of things coming up that we're trying to get done here in March and April. And then just lastly, we are going to be celebrating the 100th anniversary of Central Park this year. Central Park started its life in 1922. And so we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of Central Park. And we are wanting to plan some special events this year to commemorate that activity. And we're putting together a community committee. And we'd like to have one representative of the Park and Recreation Commission to be part of that planning committee going forward. So Chris, I'll leave it to you to ask for volunteers, or I don't think there will be a lot of meeting time, but you know, we want to get a representative from the commission. We're getting a representative from the city council, a representative from the Arboretum Society that obviously has been in Central Park, the San Mateo Historical Association, Mitch Postal will also be. So it's going to be a small committee, but we just want to kind of just brainstorm some ideas of community activities that we'd like to try and put on this year.
Okay, well, yeah, Sheila, you had mentioned this to me earlier, and
Chris, can I interrupt real quick?
of course,
We have one member of the public that joined, and I just want to circle back to see if we didn't do a public comment on the report and commission or the report out from Commissioner
You're right.
Wolnick.
You're right, we did not, but it's never too late to open that. So let's do that. We'll reopen public comment on the now wait a minute, this is on we're talking about the facility naming policy.
Chair Massey, the attendee joined the meeting after the item had already ended.
Had already ended. Okay, then I guess okay. I wasn't aware that we normally had public comment on items that come up under reports and announcements. Sheila, do you have any insight on this?
We don't typically. I think what the commission may want to consider is that, you know, we do state at the beginning of the meeting that if there are more people than 15 minutes worth at the beginning, that the commission does have the option to open public comment at the end of the meeting. But I would encourage you that if you want to do that, that it be for public comment on items that are not on the agenda, as I believe we have already passed the items that are already agendized.
Yes. Okay. I agree with you. I think we can do that. I still don't see it being appropriate to open up public comment on items that come up under reports and announcements. So and as far as
Again, I think if you want to provide opportunity for public comment, I would suggest that you do so for comment on items that are not on the agenda.
yeah, no, I agree, and I'm just wondering whether whether that's even appropriate, given that the individual has joined the meeting so late. What do my fellow commissioners feel about this? do we?
Just ask for public comment.
Yeah, but I think we should finish reports and announcements first and then just open it for items not on the agenda.
That's fine. That's fine. Let's do that. Okay, so we were back on the issue of a commission representative on the 100th anniversary committee. I'm looking for an expression of interest in doing this.
I would happily serve on that committee.
Okay.
Terrific, thank you.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Unless there's someone else who wants to put their name forward, going once, going twice, you're appointed. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Fields. And I said, well, it'll be a relatively short commitment in terms.
Well, it's a
of-
great
of
park. It'll be
meetings.
easy to celebrate.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And we're happy that you're willing to devote some additional time and effort to this. So thank you. Any other, Sheila, do you have anything else?
No, I'm just looking through my list. I think that's all. I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you might have on either any of our current projects or anything relative to department operations.
Okay, any questions from any member of the commission for Sheila? Okay, seeing none, I guess the last thing that we have is this question of reopening the public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. And I want to get an expression of view from my fellow commissioners before we make a decision about that.
I think we should. I think technical problems are always a reality in this world, and it's possible that that was the problem.
Okay. Sarah or
Yes,
Eric?
I agree. I'm happy to move forward with a non-agendized public comment period.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's do that. We will reopen the public comment period for items that are not on tonight's agenda. The individual who has joined us late might not have heard the reading of the rules on this, and the one item I will just touch on is that public comment on this is limited to a total of 15 minutes. So Giovanna, could you see if our attendee would like to speak to us?
Absolutely, Chair Massey. Martin, if you are interested in speaking, if you could raise your hand. He has not raised his hand, Chair Massey.
Okay, well then I will close the public comment period. I'd like to thank him for attending our meeting even belatedly. We are always happy to have members of the public involved in our meeting and our meetings. So thank you for being here. Is there anything else that anyone feels should be brought up at this time before we adjourn? Hearing none, I will declare us adjourned. Thank you all very much. See you next month.
Thank you and good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.